Jackson. I'm here with Jaxon Italiano. Great to see you, Jackson. It's 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. What time is it where you're at? Where you're at?
It's about 10:30 where I am in Sydney, in Australia. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Look forward to getting to know you a little bit better. And it's great seeing you just it was 2 weeks ago in New York. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up in Sydney, in Australia. I've been here for about most of my life, about 24 years. And then I was living in Queensland, which is up north, temporarily for 2 years. Yeah, but basically all my life has been focused in and around Sydney. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your childhood. What was that like?
Um, Probably I've had a very good childhood, I think. I think what made it good was that my mum was very strict on technology. I wasn't really able to use it as much as probably most kids my age growing up. I think probably at the time I didn't like that, but in hindsight, I think it had a lot of benefits. I was probably like a lot more outgoing than a lot of the other kids, and I just like to explore. And yeah, I think that was a really important thing for me growing up and probably helped me a lot down the line with um like motivation wise, just being really physical and active.
So what were you involved in? What were the things that you used most of your time doing as a growing up as a kid?
Um Usually I'd be outdoors a lot, just like climbing and having fun, particularly with my brother, just yeah, looking for trouble, I guess, or just having a bit of fun. Yeah, my sports I did was mainly soccer and taekwondo. Um, and I'd pretty much did everything, bit of footy, swimming. Yeah, I was just a very physically active kid. And then indoors, I just, I like to draw, play Lego, play the piano. This is quite a few years back, but yeah.
Awesome. When was it that you started doing pull-ups?
Yeah, so I think I was doing pull-ups when I was a bit younger, maybe around 10. Um, we had a bit of a staircase in my house where I could kind of latch my hands onto the back. And I think I was kind of doing like reps of 10 back when I was quite young, not really knowing where it would take me. And then when I was getting into cycling competitively, in order to improve my core strength, I'd usually go to the park down the road and do some calisthenic exercises. And most of that would be like pull ups and chin ups and dips. And then I noticed out of all the exercises that my pull up was by far the strongest compared to the other ones. So I think that's when I started to realize that I had some type of a uh yeah, genetic benefit there, I think.
I see you said you're doing cycling competitively.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I started doing that when I was 14 and then I stopped doing that around the time of early 2022 because I was getting into quite a competitive level and the level was a bit too high for me. And when you're in your 20s, you just kind of want to have fun as well. So I think the demand for training and then the other side of wanting to enjoy your 20s is kind of yeah, it's a fine line because you have to train a lot if you want to be a good cyclist by any degree. And I don't think I was very naturally gifted. I just really liked the sport, so I did everything around it to try and improve my fitness on the bike, and that's kind of how the pull ups came into it.
I was just going to ask, so when did you take pull-ups more serious?
I think what happened was I stopped going to the park because I don't really remember, but I remember when I went back to it, I hadn't done any upper body work in a very long time, and I remember being able to do about 18 clean strict pull-ups without any training beforehand. So that's I think in my head I knew that there was something up here. I could maybe think about doing a record. I've always been quite competitive or looking for a challenge, so it just naturally kind of came to my head that maybe there's a record out there. I'm sure there would be, and I think I just did my research and was like, well, maybe I'll come back to that. And then I think what happened was I'd wanted to ride my bike from Sydney to Canberra, which was about 300 kilometers, so about 180 miles. And I ticked that off my bucket list. And then that's when I realized that I wanted to focus my attention on this record that I was telling people that I was going to go for.
So, what age were you when you first had that thought about a record with pull-ups?
I think I was about 20 to 21. So that was 2020, 2021. So maybe
And
around a year before I actually went for the record
so
attempt or
about a year
about doing.
before.
Yeah.
So that year before, what did you do to just mentally and physically prepare for, to break the Guinness World Record?
Um, I think initially I didn't really know how it would go. I kind of just said to myself, well, I'll do the best I can, and I can't really ask much more for that. I've never trained for anything like this. Uh, Basically, in my head, what I thought would be a good idea was I'd take all the theory I learnt from cycling training and apply it to pull-ups, which doesn't really work because one's a continuous exercise, you're constantly cycling, and the other one's like a stop-start type thing. So I think it benefited me for like a good period of time, but I think because of the logic of training most days a week doesn't really agree with the pull-up, just because it's a very you're very likely to get injured. So I had to kind of scale that back a bit. But I think I had a lot of confidence knowing that I could easily ride my bike for 6 hours or 10 hours if I wanted to. So in my head, I knew that if I could needed to do a 6 hour session on the bar, it wouldn't be too bad because I'd done it kind of before in a different exercise. So I think mentally I was quite definitely ready for the job. That's for sure.
Talk about like getting started and then leading up to it, like the training, I guess, like how many hours a day or what did the training look like?
Yeah, so initially what I was doing was pretty much 5 to 6 days a week, and they would range from sessions that would be 1.5 hours up to 6 hours. And mainly it was low intensity, just long hours to get the endurance in the arms, which was the main point of that first period of time. And then sprinkling little interval sessions. So it would be like you'd do 1 hour at 6 a minute, and then you'd do 5 minutes at 10 a minute, and then you'd have a 5 minute rest period where you'd go back to 5 a minute. That type of thing, back and forth, just like high intensity interval training. And then later on, that proved not to work so well. I got very fit and I got very good quickly, but the injuries, yeah, they didn't really agree with that. So then what happened later on was I reached out to someone who had the record beforehand, and they suggested training at a high rate only, but not training as many days a week. So that looked like seeing how long I could hold a pace of 10 a minute for. And once I could hold that for 6 hours, I knew that I was ready because that was pretty much 50% of the record at the time that I went for it within a quarter of a day. So that was my goal in the end. So that took me 6 weeks to get up to that point in time since starting at 10 a minute.
I love that you reached out to someone that's already did it. That's obviously makes a lot of sense. It's great wisdom there that you just shared. How long in before you did that and what like a year before you went for the record, you started training for it. Like how long in did you realize, okay, this isn't working. I gotta, just looking for that little bit of edge. So you reached out to somebody else and your strategy changed. And it might be that just that little thing that made all the difference, right? So how long was that about?
I think it was about 6 months in, so it was quite late into the process. I think it felt reasonable to do it because I'd pretty much exhausted all my options, and I was like, well, I might as well go to people who've actually done it. It just made a lot of sense. I don't think most people would probably be ashamed to consider that an option because I know a lot of people just want to do it themselves, but I don't regret it at all, and I learned a lot. So it was pretty much just changing my whole perception of the way you train for things. and how important rest is. I was going from doing 5 to 6 days a week sessions to only doing sometimes 2 a week, and I would be way fitter at the end of that week just from all the rest that I accumulated. So yeah, I think it was it's very important thing to learn from other people, especially those who have done it successfully.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you decided to apply. Walk us through like the day of doing it. How were you feeling? Were you really nervous? Did you feel good, or what was your mindset then?
I remember being very confident that I could do the record, but because I'd never done a day that was bigger than 4,000 pull-ups, I wasn't sure how my body would hold up. And the other thing was I took a bit of a gamble because of a wrist injury I had in training. I was using hooks that would strap to my wrists, so I didn't really have much grip strength. And then you're obviously not allowed to use them on the record day, so I kind of just winged it and saw what my hands could do. And yeah, they pulled out okay. I think I had a bit of an issue around the 6 hour mark where I started to overheat a lot, and I had to jump in the cold shower because nothing was lowering my body temperature. They put the gym at the lowest temperature they could legally do it at, and they couldn't put it any lower. Uh, yeah, that was a bit of a scare, but once I'd been able to cool my body down, I was locked on, and I think I just didn't leave the bar for 8 hours. And then I think once I'd broken the 12-hour record, that I had so much time ahead of me that I just knew that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of being patient. So I think it was a mixture of confidence, but also uncertainty because I'd never done a 24-hour event before. And even knowing what the people who have done the record before me, um, even learning from them, it wasn't really enough because I needed to experience it on my own. You can't really live a lot through other people. You got to experience it. And yeah, I learned a lot through that.
So if those don't know, obviously you beat the Guinness World Record for 20 pull-ups in 24 hours. What was the mark that you beat?
The mark was 7,715, and then I got 8,008.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So how did you did that. You obviously you did your lap. First, let's talk about how you felt beating the record. Doing one more than the current record. How was that feeling?
Yeah, it was a very strange feeling. I think in my head I thought it would feel different, but because I had so much time, like I'd beaten the record with about more than 6 hours remaining in the day. It was almost like an anticlimax type thing because I wasn't sure if I'd be like right against the time there, right against the 24-hour marker. But I think I just remember soaking it in. I think it was about 4 a.m. in the morning, and I had a few people there because everyone from the gym went to sleep, and I was happy to have a few friends there that were supporting me. And I think I just thought about everything that had happened in all those months before, and I was just really happy to be there. And yeah, it was a very great moment. I won't ever forget it.
How did it feel after you were completely finished? You did your last pull-up.
I was absolutely spent. I was just, yeah, destroyed. I couldn't straight. One of the reasons I stopped was because I couldn't straighten my left arm any further, and that's you're kind of going against Guinness's guidelines because they require a straight arm. So I didn't want to risk that, but I was completely shattered. I don't think I couldn't sleep for 2 days because I was in so much pain. And if I wanted to change positions on my bed, I'd have to physically get off and flop myself over, get in a bit of a more comfortable position. But I think within a week, my everything was back to normal. Just my hands were just very not good. They were just took a few months for my hands to fully recover.
Wow. Question I have is when did you do your next pull-up after that?
Good question. I'm not too sure. I think the thought of doing it was just so horrible to me. But I think I was in the gym with a few friends just doing light exercise, and they were just like kind of egging me on to do a pull up. And I think that's just how it happened. And I kind of did it, and it was just like, oh, that's not as bad as I remember it.
Yeah, I ran 3 miles 2, 3 times a week for years. probably 20 years. And then I did my first marathon, and I don't think I wanted to run at all, at least for probably 2 years after that. It was
Yeah, yeah. I was the same. I think you just got to like push through that barrier, I guess. Uh, yeah, it's not so bad again once you start.
right. So tell us how you met Doug.
Yeah, so I think I had the record officially, and Doug reached out to me last year in June. He just wanting a bit of advice. I think he'd already started training maybe 5 weeks in, and I think he was a bit lost. Yeah, and I think up until that point, I had at least 100 people reach out to me asking for advice, and Doug was one of them. And then he was pretty much the only person who listened to my every word and really stuck to it towards the end. So yeah, yeah, that's how it happened.
Wow. So 100 plus people reached out to you. Doug was coachable. He listened, and he's the one that made it through and beat the record. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He mentioned you were in contact pretty much daily, probably through text and different, messaging. What tips and advice would you typically share with him?
I would mainly, yeah, I think it would change day to day. I think through his training, I'd remember things as I went along. I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I remember this happened to me in training." I think the main principle was to get him on a training program that was similar to mine, where he could build his endurance. So most of our discussion was about correctly training for it without being injured. Unfortunately, injuries did happen to plague his training a lot, so that was took up a lot of discussion. Just ways that to get around his injury. Pretty much basically anything that I can think of within the world of pull-ups we spoke about. Different bar thicknesses, really like technical things that most people wouldn't be interested in, but yeah, it would change day to day. But I think the most important thing was that all of our conversation wasn't with the idea of anything too far in the future. I think I just wanted to keep him focused on the present, because I think a lot of people can fall into the trap of looking into the future too much. And I think all that really matters is what's happening in the moment, particularly in training. You don't want to overdo it, because once you start over analyzing things, then your performance kind of takes a hit, I think. So I think the main thing is just getting him focused on the present.
Awesome. So talk about, getting ready to I guess you had the event planned, the date, and just talk about, flying from Sydney to New York. Obviously, that's not going right next door to be there for him.
Yeah, yeah. I was very lucky because work let me take time off despite me only being with them for 2 months. So they were very good to, yeah, give me the thumbs up for that. And yeah, I flew over and met Doug, which is very exciting because we don't only ever talked through text, and maybe we'd call every now and then. Yeah, it was very nice. I could tell he was very relaxed when I saw him, which was a very good sign for me. I don't really know how other people are, but I was a bit like on edge during the week just because I needed to get everything ready. Set up the bar a few days ago, and then you were there, and then we'd all set that up, and then the event just went very smoothly. And yeah, I listened to my every word, and yeah, it couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah, he seemed, very relaxed, confident, very confident. Obviously, preparation helps with that. Having you as a coach, I'm sure helped with that. What was it like seeing him, just being there and seeing him go for this world record attempt?
Yeah, it was very interesting being on the other side of it in a good way because I'm not the one in pain this time. Uh, but it was just nice to see that everything coming together. I'd never been in a situation before where I've coached anyone, and so to see that work is just it was almost better than doing the record myself, just because I could share my knowledge or wisdom with someone else, and to know that there's people out there who will listen to what you'll say, and to see that it works. And him like being living proof that what I've been telling all these other people actually works for him is just great. And then yeah, I remember when he did that rep to beat the record, I could see he was getting emotional, and then yeah, it was just a very lovely moment. It almost made me consider wanting to go for it again, but I don't think I will. It was just yeah. I think because I've been on both sides of it, I can appreciate it for what it is, and I don't think I'd be involved with it ever again.
Well, obviously, it's very inspiring to see that. And I love to hear that you say it felt better almost coaching him. That's awesome. Just to to beat the Guinness World Record yourself and then to coach somebody to do it is that's amazing. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, so what's the future look like for you? What plans you have going forward now?
I don't have many physical goals that I have in my head. I think I kind of hung it up after I did the record. I think I just wanted to take it a back seat. Uh, but I'm thinking of getting back into cycling again just because I enjoyed it so much. Um, yeah, nothing crazy at the moment. I think me and Doug were talking about maybe like climbing Everest one day. I thought that would be a cool idea. But obviously it's quite expensive, so we'll have to think about that. But at the moment, yeah, just kind of relaxing, just soaking everything in. Uh, yeah, yeah. I think I'm sure just because of my nature, I'm sure something will come to me and something a bit extreme, and I'll probably go headfirst into it. But at the moment, nothing really.
What advice do you have for anyone that's looking to beat a Guinness World Record?
Um, that's a good question. I think pretty much what I was saying before, what I was saying to you before, I think just focusing on the present and not looking too far into the future. It's nice to have that. You kind of it's a bit of both. You do have to have that goal that you want to gravitate towards, but I think with the journey, you just gotta stay in the present and just be confident that you'll get there. It's not much, but because I'm on the spot, I'm sure there's other things I could think about, but that's like a main one for me at least that I'd be willing to give that information out to people that
Oh, that's
are
great.
ready to go for the record.
That's great. Final words. Anything else that you didn't share that you want to share before we wrap up?
Um, Not really. I think I'm a bit tired, so I can't really think well. But I think I've said everything. I think you asked a lot of good questions, so I think you've got everything out of me.
That's great. Great. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Jaxon.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.